holy fuck, I'm just making all of this up right now. Like everything that I'm experiencing is just this kind of flavor of me, and it's not happening to me. I can, the word that we use is projection, but it's like I can say it's happening over there. I can say it's happening anywhere that I want to, but all of that experience is actually some activity that I'm doing. You don't have to be perfect in that, obviously. That's, I don't know that that exists, right? Maybe it does.
I have quite of a funky relationship to you, Andrew, in the way that I've met you several times and we haven't actually spent that much time together.
Yeah, that's true.
You even led a workshop in my house once that I only half participated in
Yeah,
because
you were sleeping. You were sleeping on the second day. I think you guys
yeah,
went to Malmo, I think, right?
yeah, I think I went to some
Yeah,
kind of party and I was really hungover or
yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, Um, and then I've seen sort of your work and things you write at a distance, and really enjoyed it and felt really in resonance with it. So yeah, so I'm happy that you're here and we can talk. And there's also this sort of, oh, who are we? What is our relationship thing?
Yeah,
Um, but I guess part of that is that I get to know you a little bit better by you talking about yourself.
sure.
So I'd like to hear just what's your story, or like everybody seems to have some kind of developmental story that has brought them into the kind of stuff that we're into. So what's
Yeah,
yours?
yeah. Okay, what an interesting prompt. Okay, developmental story. So, um, I usually start with this somewhere else, but I'm prompted towards I had a very strange psychological upbringing, and I think that's really important. And I feel free about that. I can talk about that if that's interesting. I don't find it particularly, I don't think it's necessary, but it was just not um the way I think not the way that most people are raised in terms of like having the kind of psychological holding space that I was raised within, and the way that my parents were in the society that I grew up in. And I think that matters because it gave me also a very different inner world, I think, than a lot of people carry around with them, which I didn't really notice. Um, I had a number of mystical experiences when I was very young. But then they kind of happened in this weird corner of my mind, like I didn't really know what to do with them or what they were, or they were frightening for a child, right? A lot of them. And so it wasn't until I had a kensho, a satori, when I was 20, which is a Buddhist word for an experience of Buddha mind. And that really changed my inner world. And it took me from being like, I was sort of like a material, very casually and without any attachment to it, but I was a materialist atheist, basically. Like I wasn't raised within any tradition. I was raised in the sort of postmodern soup, egalitarian soup of the East Coast of the United States in the 90s. Um, and then I had that experience and I did not know what the fuck to do with it either. But fortunately, um, I didn't need to for very long. I had a friend give me a copy of a book by Ken Wilber the next day, and I read this front page of this book, and I won't say it verbatim, but it was basically like anywhere at any time this can happen to anybody. And then there was a description by one of the Western mystics of their awakening experience. I think it was Buck, but it might be Traherne. And then at the bottom, Wilbur goes, wow, what an incredible experience. We would certainly be remiss if we were to dismiss it as being like psychotic because it shares none of the tortured anguish of the psychotic. And I read that, and my friend didn't know that this had happened to me. He just was like, hey, you might find this cool. And I read that, and I was like, holy fuck, that happened to me yesterday. That fucking happened to me yesterday. And that sent me on. I started meditating, I started reading, trying to figure out what the fuck was this? Who knows anything about it? I tried starting to talk about it, which was a huge mistake. It took me, I think, years, probably 15 years to start to become comfortable having a conversation about it in a way that didn't make me sound either like I was a crazy person or, but mostly that I was a crazy person. And then so in the process of that, as I was kind of chasing what it was that happened to me and going into different practices, and I did a long I did yoga for many years, and I learned how to do Tai Chi and Qigong when I was in China. And at some point, I was like, oh, I'm going to go do this master's program in integral theory. And in the first cohort there, so we would come, most of it was online, but we would come together at our campus in California or in Boulder, and meet as, in person once a year. It was a 3 year long, or twice a year. It was a three year long program. And the first one of those, somebody was leading an exercise that was an intersubjective exercise or relational exercise. And I was sitting and looking at this woman next to me, and I just all of a sudden there was like, holy fuck, this is a being. Like this is another living, intelligent self that is there, and yet we're here at the same time. And it opened up into what at the time was called we space. I don't really like that word, but that was kind of the buzzword at the moment. And um, I was just like, I need to know what this is and why it happened and where. I wouldn't put it that way exactly, but it really lit me up from the inside. It ended up being what I wrote my thesis about. And in that process, I did training in circling in San Francisco, and I learned a bunch of other different modalities and a bunch of different other approaches to intersubjective practice or we space practice. Um, and then pretty quickly that became my uh, like that moment and other experiences of it all came with this sense of like, oh, this is how we're going to relate in the future, or it's how we can relate in the future. And also the sense of this is a really beautiful door for the other practices that I've already been doing. So coming into a deeper sense of embodiment and waking up in the Buddhist sense and in the Advaita Vedanta sense. And so I just kind of started playing with that, and I moved here to Europe. I met my partner in those years, my ex-wife, and we had a child, and I moved over here, and so I made friends with the circling crowd over here. Um, and I've just been experimenting and playing with like, what is relationship? What is intersubjectivity? What's the relationship with awakening in these practices? And I've done a bunch of different, ways of sort of orienting that. And um, uh, more or less that brings us up to the present. I do feel like I'm in a very different phase of my work that has started quite recently, which is sort of taken a lot of those insights and reformed or reshaped them. I've returned to circling quite a bit. So when I first learned how to circle, I was sort of like, okay, this is great, but I'm really interested in this other stuff and this, these deeper things, and deeper in quotes. And I've really come back to circling as being like an extraordinarily integrative practice and a very good base and foundation for these other practices of intersubjectivity and awakening. And so I have my own kind of way of holding the practice of circling in relationship with the practices of awakening, and have rewritten. I use rewritten, but I don't know what other reorganized circling so that it is in a more generative relationship with these other practices that we've been doing for thousands of years. So, Yeah, I think that takes us up to today. That's who I am in this context, obviously. Yeah,
Great.
yeah,
Yeah, wow, it's a lot to take in somehow. It's like there's a whole picture being painted that I, yeah, didn't know was there.
yeah,
And there's, yeah, it's curious with the integral connection, uh, that it pops up a lot in my life these days.
mm,
There's like my partner now, it also came, yeah, through yeah, deep experience, an awakening experience of sorts, into integral, or had
yeah,
this sort of Wilbur somehow managing to speak into that in a way that has been really profound for her.
yeah.
And yeah, and the impact on me is like this, like I think there's something I'm not getting here. And there's a bit of
Yeah,
frustration. It's like I've been fucking around in this field for many years, and I think I'm pretty clever about it, and I know not. And then there's still this like there's something I'm not really understanding. Um,
yeah. I I have a funny relationship with Wilbur. I feel like he's in a certain in a certain sense, I lived inside the man's head for probably 7 or 8 years, right? Like after I read that book that I was mentioning, I moved to China. I only read a couple of his books at first, but I was very much in this this set of lenses that he had sort of put together and looking through the world through in these ways. The master's program I took, one of the funniest, one of the things that occurred really quickly in that first meeting was, we're all the people who are there in the program are sitting and talking with each other, and all of us are being so careful to be like, yeah, but also, there's a lot more than just Wilbur, and we're being very critical of him and all of these other things. Like there is a way of, because his mind is so expansive, and because he's masterful in ways that he puts things together, but that of course always involves some kind of sleight of hand and some misdirection, and it's a creative act in a very real way. So um, I've gone through a lot of, and this is not only my experience, it's a lot of people's experience. People tend to either really glom onto him or not. And then if you glom onto him, often there's a process of just totally, taking in the worldview and then really like being like, oh, this is actually gross. I don't like it at all. I don't want to be associated with it. And then coming back to a kind of appreciation for what it is that he's put together as you sort of make the material your own. But that process takes a long fucking time. Like there's a lot in what it is that he's pointing to and writing about. So, um, I don't have any sense at the moment of like, I meet a lot of people who are like, I don't want to fucking, like, this is not for me at all. And it's like, yeah, no, I get that. I respect that. I don't think you need to read him to be fluent in the world that's coming. I think that's another beautiful thing. Like, there are so many doors, and people articulate the things that I say it's coming, but it's not an inevitability in any stretch of the imagination. But um, people have so many different doors into what when I use the word integral, what it is that I mean by that have nothing to do necessarily with Wilbur, with what it is, the way that he holds it, or what it is that he's writing. So, but there is something, I found something invaluable there, obviously, and I'm also very much not the only person. There are a lot of people who are like, wow, this makes so much sense of all of these different things that I'm experiencing that I just don't find anywhere else. And that is a gift and and a valuable, the valuable thing to have come across in this moment. I'm also not the only person to have a bizarre, that's a bizarre story for me. That's a synchronicity that is not, how can I, it was like, oh, it was just, what is the people say with synchronicities? Like it's confirmation bias or something. It's like, nah, man, like this is something that changed my entire sense of what the fuck is real and what I'm doing here. that happened the day before this, receiving this book from this person that I've never heard of in my life that is talking about that experience on the first page of the book. Like that doesn't fucking just, it's not confirm. I'm not looking for it, right?
Mm.
Uh, it's a it's a funny thing.
Mm. Yeah, well, maybe it's an interesting segue into something that maybe could be fun to explore with you. It's like I find myself coming very much from sort of I don't know what to call it, some kind of radical pragmatism.
Yeah.
That is like, so what works
Yeah,
is like
totally.
is like my thing. It's like I want to be more effortlessly efficient in the world.
Yeah.
And I want good heuristics and good epistemology and good tools to do that.
Yeah.
That's what I care about. I don't
Yeah,
care so much
totally.
about what's real and discussing what's real or not.
Yeah.
And I've been pretty, well, and I still am to a certain extent, like skeptical towards words like enlightenment bother
Yeah.
me. There's
Yeah.
something with the reification of
Totally.
these things that sort of ick me. And then still, I continuously find myself in fields and practices that does seem to work with awakening as a phenomenon and what that
Yeah.
is. And my
Yeah.
resistance is softening, I notice. And then I see you, or like I imagine you coming more from the side of awakening as practice, or like you're more embedded in, well, if there is a polarity, uh, you're on another side of the polarity than I am, I think. And I'm curious for you to sort of talk into
Man.
awakening and these interpersonal practices. How does that go
Oh
together?
God. Like it's oh man, it's like so many books. I'm so before we were recording, just for anyone who's listening, we had a little of an aside around how exciting this material is. And I want to try and communicate from a place that is grounded in the experience more than it is just excited about the fucking ideas. But the ideas are so fucking exciting and they bring so much energy as we're talking. So I love it. I love I think the discussion that we could have, this is weeks and lifetimes long of material. I'll start from a couple different places. So um, wait, did I just say I'm start from a couple different places? I'm going to try to start from one place. Let's start there. Let's start with one place. So, the way that I orient to not only a word like awakening, but also just practices in general and also integral theory is very rooted in the American philosophical tradition of pragmatism, right? So it is very much saying, hey, um, let's kind of bracket all of the things that we believe and the ways that we approach what reality is from inside of these filters and just see, like you're saying, what is it that actually works? What is functional? You can't do that entirely because it turns out, it's like an Ouroboros. It comes back to, well, what works for me is going to be in some way dependent upon the way that I orient to what is real and what is it that I believe. Every experience that you have, no matter how direct it is a construction in some sense. It is being generated by these processes that are, um, not completely independent on the mechanisms of interpretation of your perceptual systems and also your conceptual systems, right? So awakening is a word that doesn't, for me, when I use it, it doesn't refer to like some metaphysical thing. Awakening isn't really properly held, I think. I don't think awakening is actually even an experience. It's something very difficult uh, if not impossible, to wrap your mind around because it isn't most of the way that we construct our sense of what is going on around us relies on the learning that we do in relationship to experiences that happen, right? So, awakening is some other thing, and it might be helpful. It might be helpful to, um, oh man. It, yeah. So there's an irony here too. So uh, in the process of getting underneath the way that your mind is making sense of the world through the concepts that you're using, and in the process of developing this closer and less mediated relationship with your embodied experience. Um, there's a stage of that process where uh, because everything that you are experiencing is conditioned and constructed in relationship to these processes of conceptual and perceptual systems of interpretation. Um, there can be this sort of like well, how the fuck do I get out of that experience? Because that's not how we relate to our experience for most of our life and for most people at all, right? They never come to the point of being like, well, I'm kind of making all of this up, right? I mean something specific by that, but you always have some element of your experience, especially as a young child, that is just given to you, right? That's sort of the philosophical word for it. It's just there. So when I have an experience, even though that experience is referential in some way. When I'm angry because you did something to me, right? I don't recognize that that anger and the activity that it's pointing at are actually point at each other, right? And that that relationship isn't inevitable, right? Part of what happens, and part of what I'm meaning by the word awakening, is that entire game like basically being seen through, no longer reaching for something which is ultimate because there isn't any ground to stand on whatsoever. And while that can sound like something which is deeply troubling and unnerving, and in a certain sense it is, it initiates the disillusion of all of the ground that you think that you're standing on. Um, None of that ground was real as such in the first place. So uh, I've just kind of like let's just use that as an opening. I want to see what lands from that because I jumped around to a bunch of different things. Like I said, I'm trying to maybe answer, like respond as a book, and that might not be skillful, but how does it land? Like what strikes you about it?
I guess the impact is it was a little bit hard to listen
Mm,
for me. So when you said it was a little bit like speaking like a book, that resonates. That I
yeah,
sort of zoned out a little bit at times. And then what I heard that I'm interested in and would like to explore is this no ground to stand on. Mm, at least in my experience from practice, my sense is that the experience of no ground to stand on, or this sort of lack of absolute referential points,
yeah,
has led me to feeling very grounded.
yes,
So there's a paradox there,
yes,
where, and I keep referring to this as something being more real in my experience.
yes,
Like there's actual contact that wasn't there before in the same way.
yes,
And it comes with these experiences of like I know what is happening in another person to a
yes,
very large extent.
Yes.
just because I'm available for it and I didn't
Yes.
used to be available for it
Yes.
because of my own sort of, I don't know, ego contraction or whatever.
Yes.
And when
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
less of that, I'm more available to listen to what's actually here.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, so that's kind of the territory I hear you speaking into.
Yeah, very much so. So in my sense, um, we can talk a little bit about the way that the mind works, because I think that's part of the thing that we're always going to be talking around a little bit. So a paradox for me, uh, it usually indicates a deeper kind of truth that the mind has difficulty reconciling itself to, because the mind makes meaning through contrast and through differentiation. But if you're taking the wholeness of experience and you're dividing it up, to contrast between these different things, you're doing something which is always going to be artificial. It's always going to be a construction. So at a certain point, um, as you are essentially, and I think of this in a very bodily way, like this is not a mental phenomenon. It's something that your body, heart, mind is doing, right? Um, at a certain point, you're not naming the sense of groundedness without it also bringing up the sense of complete groundlessness, right? You're not talking about practical reality without also talking about whatever the opposite of practical reality would be, like metaphysical dogma or something like that, or view, right? That's an activity of your mind. The thing that makes that seem like it's different in experience is an activity of your mind, and that becomes transparent. Part of that transparent process is what it is that I'm calling awakening. So that recognition that uh, and this is again where it becomes practical, the recognition that the act of communicating is something that I'm always doing in relationship. So why am I saying I'm sitting over here and you're sitting over there? Well, I'm saying that because I'm communicating as this being to you over there, to that being. But I don't need to assume that this being is somehow metaphysically different from that being over there in order to say that, right? So this is uh, there's a line of thinking in Buddhist thought, which is both and neither nor, right? So you can't say that the hand is real. You can't say that the hand is unreal. You can't say that it's both real and unreal. And you can't say that it's neither real nor unreal. That layer of reality is always kind of an illusion that your mind is doing. But of course, you can say any of those things at any moment if that's the thing that you need to do. When I'm talking to my 2-year-old, I'm not saying any of this shit, right? I'm saying let go of the cat, right? Like take your hand off of the cat, right? And I don't need to worry about all of these other things. So we have this really funny, one of those polarities is form and formlessness, right? We have this really funny experience of being of being embodied consciousness that's aware of itself to a certain extent. And that involves this constant, let me say balancing is not the right word, but it's like this constant negotiation of like what is the context within which I'm communicating, what is the purpose for which I'm communicating, when is it important to emphasize that, like, of course I'm separate from you, like I'm sitting over here and we had to schedule a time in order to have a conversation with each other. If we didn't, it wouldn't have happened. And also to recognize, that's all a creative, constructive act that is taking place for the purposes of us having this conversation. But what it is that I am, what it is that you are, what it is that we are is not definable or locatable in any final sense, with those forms. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and I want to know how it's helpful,
Yeah.
useful.
Yes, because all of those forms and holding on to those forms, the grasping of those forms is what create makes life shitty. So if I want to be, if I am trapped in a certain sense, and again, this is very bodily, right? If I'm trapped by a bodily pattern of tension, I'm going to go about life in a certain way. not only is that pattern of tension going to actually physically be painful, but it's going to restrict the possibilities that I have to responding to the world around me because, if I'm just a fist, I can't shake your hand, right? And if I'm just a fist over time, that's gonna be extraordinarily painful. It's gonna be extraordinarily painful to the extent that I don't even feel it anymore, right? And that's a metaphor in a certain sense for the way that our body minds work, but it's deeper than a metaphor. It's not about, I mean, you know that as a body worker, right? Like when you release those somatic things, your mind becomes more free. It's not just that your body becomes more free. So all of these things that I'm trying to point to and talk about, they are skillful to the extent that they let us relax the fixation that we have on who it is that we are and who it is that we are not, and opens us to be able to respond to the world from a much, the word that you're using is real, right? From a deeper reality that we're grounded in, rather than from the contractions that we, assumed as adaptations to a world, the world that we were raised in, something like that.
Yeah, a way I've spoken about it that I can maybe test on you is that the practices that I do, surrender leadership in particular, seems to have done this thing for me where I get to see my karma in action.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Like it becomes very
Yes.
apparent how I'm
Yes.
creating suffering for myself
Yes.
because I get to sit in a room and see it like that's slowed down enough that I get to sort of see live that I'm doing something in all of these situations where I previously believed that something was happening to me.
Yes.
And then it's like there's a potential to, when I've seen that enough times, like I can actually release it a little bit,
Yeah.
do something new.
Totally. Yeah. You get to see, the way that I say that is, you get to see that what you are is an activity.
Mhm.
And when you can see that what you are is an activity, you can choose to do a different activity. Can you choose to do anything that you want to? Like, no, it doesn't work that way, right? It's more like surfing or like, doing a handstand or something. But yeah, you very much so circling, and then I the word that I use for that layer of circling is open circling. So it's equivalent to what surrendered leadership is, but it's why it's so intense, right? It's this extraordinarily potent mirror
Mhm.
for what it is that you're doing as a being,
Yeah.
and that shows up, in an individual sense. So I can approach that or orient to it as an individual, but it also shows up in a collective sense. So there's karma that shows up collectively that we don't really, other than the world, just the way the world is, we don't really have access to that kind of a mirror, or access to a way of processing that, because part of the activity of relaxing these things is bringing as much presence as we can without trying to do anything to it. Because if you're trying to do something to it, that trying is going to be rooted in the identification that you have, either positively or negatively towards that contraction, towards that sense of identity, that attachment. So you just get to witness it. You get to be there and witness it and be present and be alive, and recognize it as an action that you're doing and not who it is that you fundamentally are.
Yeah. And another picture that has been very strong for me that I don't know, I think it came on like 8 years ago or something like that was just noticing that everything was fear. Like
Yeah,
like that fear is not only an inner experience of like I am afraid of something, but it's like it's in some way a whole layering on the world that
yeah,
is all the things
yep,
I am not willing to be, like
yeah,
all the ways I'm
yep,
not willing to relate is
yeah,
sort of just creating this, well, cage that
yeah,
I exist in
yeah,
because I can't be that. I'm identified with being this.
yeah,
And
yep, yeah. And all of that is underneath who it is that you think that you are. So before you're even a self having an experience, those layers are in place. We can, in circling, we can find them again. You can, circling is not the only way to do it, but we can find them again. But you can't find them as a waking conscious self in the world in a normal way. It's too entrenched in how it is that you're showing up. It's too constitutive of, the patterns of self that you take yourself as being.
Mm.
So this is why, when I say like I think circling properly held, I think circling is a practice of awakening. This is why. So in the traditions that I'm closest to, you talk about these things that block awakening or that cloud your awareness. And they're largely the things that we're talking about, right? They get in the way of recognizing that you're just consciousness, that you're just awakeness. I don't mean that dogmatically. I mean that as a kind of experience that you can have, that you can be uh, just that awareness in relationship with any content that is happening outside of yourself or any content that you yourself are sort of, bringing about behaviorally.
Mm.
It makes you aware of those things in a way that I think is better than most meditations too. Because when you're meditating, a lot of that material isn't coming up. You have to go and dig for it really hard. But being able to bring together rootedness and equanimous awareness and just your pure sense of being or presence. Oh, I use the word awareness, but for a lot of people, presence is a better word, being is a better word, knowing is a better word. They're all the same, essentially the same kind of experience,
Mm.
or condition of experiencing. Being able to bring that together with the material that comes up in this container of circling
Mhm.
I think is extraordinarily skillful and has a lot of potential in ways that are not, that I think people like you and I have been doing this for a long time are starting to explore, but it's just happening. Like it's just getting on our radar, I think.
Yeah, it's like something is relaxing in me as we're talking. I notice that it's like, oh, you're speaking into something I know or have experience with. And yeah, I don't know, it just creates some kind of safety or sameness with you, I noticed.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, maybe I started this speaking about polarity. And well, there's always polarity, but like now I just feel more in sort of the same waters.
Yeah.
Um, and where yeah, and I guess I have some kind of quite entrenched sort of resistance to reifying these things. And there's something that I see happening all the time where
Yeah.
awakening becomes a thing, or it's like an
Yeah.
attainment, like something you can have done.
Yeah.
And like, oh, now you've done that. You're at
Yeah.
that place now. And I'm like, it's just not how I experience myself or
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah.
And it scares me somehow when that way of understanding comes up. Like it's because it's so different from what I find really important and
Yeah.
care about.
Yeah.
So I think that that's the
Yeah.
relaxing now.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
we seem to care about the same
Yeah.
things.
No, for sure. I feel that as well. Like I have the sense of that, or I don't think I would want to. Actually, that's not true. I would also want to talk with you to be like, well, is there a fundamental difference here? But it wasn't the sense that I have going in, right? There's a sense of like, oh, I think we're doing something which is aiming at something very similar. One of the reasons why I do, and I feel the same way, like awakening as a word is weird, right? And there are all of these like woo-woo connotations that I don't subscribe to, right? I don't think is what it is that's going on here. Um, the reason that I use it, and I use the word tantra a lot too, because I think the word, there's always this, there's a technical term for this, which is like what happens when a word loses its meaning through overuse or like diminished use. Like Americans will call fries awesome, right? But like awesome originally was like the kind of fucking feeling that you would feel if you were standing in front of God, right? Like that's very different from these fries taste good to me. I enjoy them more than other fries, right? There's something that's happened with the word awakening. There's something that happens with the word tantra and there are other words that I use that I'm kind of purposefully adopt to try and re-imbue them with what I think they're pointing to, rather than try and create some other fucking word, that would be the super word, although I do, sometimes that's unavoidable. I do that too. I will use the term transdual instead of non-dual, because non-dual now for a lot of people it means a very specific kind of duality that I think is kind of gross. So I will do that at times, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess I did just use the word karma in a similar way. Um, I
But
think
that's what
my
karma fucking is, man. That's what it is. That's a good word for that, right? And it's like you can give in to the fact that somebody else is using the word in the way that like diminishes its weight and its gravity, or you can use that word with the weight and the gravity that it deserves. And again, that's always a choice. And sometimes I do the one and sometimes I do the other. But with awakening, I'm trying to communicate something that I find invaluable that I don't think that there's another good word for. And the cost of that is, sometimes turning people off because it's like, oh, there was a period where in the States, I mean, this is still kind of happening, but there was a period during COVID when awakening was being used for like this mass of people who were realizing that all of our structures of government were corrupt, and that there's this other shadow government that President Trump is actually at the head of, and he didn't lose the election in 2020. Not only that, but he's actually still the president, and he's in charge, and he has all of the power, and if you're awake, then you recognize that. And if you're not awake, then you don't recognize that. And it's like, it's so fucking weird in so many different ways. Um, Not that some of the bases of what that narrative are completely off base, but just the sense of, what they're using awakening to point towards. And it was during that period that I think I chose to use it, because it's like that's not what it is, man. It's important. It is important, right? It has a meaning and it has a skillfulness. So anyway, that's where when I use the word, I mean, and we haven't talked a lot about it. I kind of talked around it a couple times, but at least that's the way that I'm using the word.
yeah, I like the approach. I think my approach is to see if I can dumb things down so much that I'm actually speaking from experience I've had,
Yeah,
which often makes me feel a bit inadequate or sort of stupid, banal about things,
yeah,
but also actually in touch with what I'm speaking about. Uh,
yeah.
so,
Yeah, I mean,
um,
in practice, this is the thing about being very excited about what we're talking about too. In practice and in a day-to-day way, like if I'm teaching circling, I don't talk about any of the stuff that we're talking about, right? Ask the question, like, what is it like to be you? What's it like to be you right now? And then I share, hey, that makes me happy. Or like, I'm really curious about this other thing. Like, the frameworks are part of they're part of the background, right? But the practice itself is, if it's not super simple, right? The complexity is necessary to meet where somebody is making it harder than it has to be, something like that. And sometimes that there's a lot of complexity that's necessary because we make these things really, really, really fucking hard on ourselves, but they don't have to be. So while in this context, I get drawn into what some of my earliest loves, which are like talking about ideas and explaining things, and I'm really animated by those things clearly, and sometimes that can be very skillful interpersonally. But like when I'm sitting with a person and I'm circling them or coaching or teaching or whatever, it's what's the thing, what's the thing that you're experiencing right now? Not all of those layers. What's the thing itself? What's it like?
yeah, can we talk more about that? Like, tell me about your work. Like, what
Yeah.
does it look like? What are you excited about these days?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What does it
So
look like when you lead or when you coach or
yeah, well, as you can guess, it's pretty, there's a lot of variety. I do not shy away from structure. And I also don't shy away from like, hey, I'm teaching something, right? That teaching may show up as open and as surrender, but it's not just, hey, we're here in contact, and the contact is what is gonna, bring it out. Like that is part of it. Of course, it's part of it. Um, so that's
I
one
sense
thing.
a
I don't shy.
contrast there.
Yeah. In
So,
what sense?
well, it's just you're saying I'm not shying away from teaching. And like what it brings up for me is just having spent a lot of time with Circling Europe and sort of the surrender leadership tradition. I imagine
Yes.
that you're sort of contrasting it to something like that.
Yeah, kind of. Yes, yes. But I do it for the purposes of um uh I'm not shying away from that. And at the same time, um I feel like this is part of that word transdual, right? I feel like what I'm doing is uh being able to to sort of transmit and teach from that which is neither merely form nor formless. So formless is more surrendered leadership. There's no explicit context necessarily. Obviously, there can be very strong leadership in surrendered leadership. Nor, hey, and this is more the style of circling that I learned because I learned in the States, very structured, very formal, not very formal, but more formal than the European style for sure. Um, and I find that helpful. And I think there's a danger in taking the guardrails off too soon. And the benefit of taking the guardrails off too soon, I think, can be obvious. Like it can really bring about these amazing, deep contacts with something which isn't nameless and isn't nameable, and your capacity to feel that and experience that and be in a group with that can bring about really, really beautiful experiences. And it's really intense. And that intensity can also be overwhelming, sometimes for the same people who are finding something really important within that context of, hey, there's no boundaries here. Hey, there's no context here. Hey, we're just gonna be present, in the moment. And I feel like one of the flavors that I have is being clear on what that means psychologically for somebody, like being clear on what it is eliciting from a person's sense of themselves to enter into a space like that, and whether or not someone is ready for that, without just being like, hey, it's just this formal practice of, sentence structuring, or hey, it's just this formal practice of form and form. I said this yesterday to someone in a workshop, but I don't remember what it was. I can remember the sense of it. It's like, I don't, surrender is not a contrast to form. Surrender is not a contrast to direction and to leadership. There's a thing that takes shape with these poles of form and formlessness, but that thing itself is neither in form nor is it formless. So the way that I show up is very in relationship to who the people are that I'm guiding and what it is that we're doing. And there is often more of a focus on being in a container that has form, up to the point where somebody starts to really notice, and you started pointing at this, up to the point when someone really starts to notice, holy fuck, I'm just making all of this up right now. Like everything that I'm experiencing is just this kind of flavor of me, and it's not happening to me. I can, the word that we use is projection, but it's like I can say it's happening over there. I can say it's happening anywhere that I want to. But all of that experience is actually some activity that I'm doing. You don't have to be perfect in that, obviously. That's, I don't know that exists, right? Maybe it does. So that's one thing. And then I really put circling, even that birthday circling, what I call anchor circling, I really put that in relationship with and in the larger context of a practice of awakening. So there is even though in a birthday circle, you might never notice the difference, what goes into the approach that I'm bringing is, having a foot in these consciousness practices and having a foot in the way that they're showing up now relationally. So that is very important to me and feels like it's an interesting edge of, I think, like consciousness work broadly in the world right now. So that's another thing. Um, yeah, I think those are big differences. I'm also quite or differences like contrasts that give a flavor of how it is that I show up, right? I'm also and I think you've experienced this, but I like I like the, silly, I'm kind of jokey, alternately jokey and serious. And like that's another framework that, or polarity that shows up a lot. I'm quite open to how we navigate what it is that we're doing together and what people want to do and what's appropriate for them, while also being able to rely on a direction that I think is helpful for whatever group that I'm working with. Yeah. I like to experiment and play with things. A lot of the exercises that I come up with are spontaneous. I'm not forming them beforehand, and I don't know where they're coming from necessarily, but they tend to be really powerful. And then often it's like, oh, I'm going to use this again in the future, in some way, shape, or form. So playful and serious. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of other polarities that show up in that way. I like we just lost my train of thought.
I'm yeah, I have a few questions that I would like to explore. One is like, what are you learning through practice these days? Like, what's your own edge?
Mm. I really like that question. Hmm. There's one. Uh, so there's one way of answering that, which is just because this happened today, and it's like I use the word reactivity a lot. Reactivity is a word that one of my teachers used to translate suffering from the Buddhist text, so dukkha, the sense of like something is unsatisfactory, and I find it really helpful in giving people a flavor of what when you say you get triggered, what does that feel like? Well, it's your system is reacting to something. It's not just being with the experience. It's in some way, adding its own reactive energy. It's pushing it away. It's trying to grab for it. It's trying to pretend it's not there. And you know, taking seriously that any reactivity is like just an attachment that you're dealing with, or just an expression of uh, some certain flavor that is unskillful in the way that you are in the world in a day-to-day way. I had a really difficult series of conversations over the last 24 hours with Catherine, my partner, and yet. And it took a couple of different, as I rarely get this entrenched in something today, but it took a couple of different moments of being like, man, I am so reactive right now. Why? What am I reacting to? And then this morning, without doing it purposefully, it came, I was working on something else, right? Often as these things come, I got this sense of like this specific moment when I saw her yesterday, and I won't get too much into the details because it's personal, but I had this flavor that I experienced. And then it was like, wait a minute, I know that flavor. Like, actually, there's this very, it's this very young sense and helpless and kind of disgusted. And I'm like totally projecting it onto her, but I'm having that experience right now. And so, um, this is obviously still in process, but like just recognizing that and being like, oh, brought an entirely different kind of presence between the two of us. And it's like, oh, we can find each other again after this, what was a rough 24 hours. So that first one, I think, is I would use the word humility for that, and like a very like an ever finer sense of what is it in me that is reactive and what those layers, because these are all again pre-conscious, right? I'm not conscious of them until I can see them as reactivity. What are those layers that are present in this being, and how is it you work with them is about what I was about to say that makes it seem almost more pragmatic or like a process. At this point, there wasn't much that I was doing consciously this entire time. Like all of that architecture is sort of up and running automatically internally. But I think that like a finer and finer and finer sense of what reactivity feels like and looks like in more and more subtle ways. And then I'm also, that's one side. And then there's, it's funny because you said it in the beginning. You were like, that's a lot. And it's like, I can feel, it's like, how do I keep contact with all of these things that I feel present to and sensitive to, right? Again, this is kind of a bodily experience. How do I keep contact with all of that without collapsing or blowing it out of proportion while I'm in contact with the person that is in front of me in a way that is still, if I'm teaching the practice or if I'm coaching someone in a way that is like useful and skillful for them, right? Um, how do I take, you know, how do I keep leaning into a greater or greater experience of what it is to be? So I'm a tantric, as I said, or I used that word before. And in Tantra, the aliveness of your experience of your body, this is maybe an oversimplification, but I think it's a helpful framework. The aliveness of your body is a reflection of the awareness that you are or the awakeness that you have. And those are not different expressions of each other. They're the same thing. They're kind of like two hands. They're not reducible, but they are the same thing. So how can I continually find that edge of aliveness that I am uh, just a little bit uncomfortable with, and allow it to be in communion with the world around me and in transmission with the world around me, something like that. Oh, I love that. I have not, neither of those things I've given any thought to. I really enjoy that.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah, shit. Yeah,
and some of that
teaching.
is how do you communicate it in a day-to-day way, right? Like we're having you were a particular person and I am a particular person, and we had our process of trying to find, what's the point of connection, I think in a meta way too, because we've never really had a conversation like this before. Um, but I'm writing a book right now, and it's like, how do I put this infinite source of value in a way that does justice to how complex some of these things are, but also allows people to pick it up and recognize themselves in it and be able to interact with it without trying to, bend their minds around it or break their minds around it, right? How do you put it as simply as possible without losing the depth that is present?
Mhm.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess part of that, at least for me, I'll check if you feel similar, is like, well, and who am I in this? It's
Mm.
like I don't know. I say it playfully, but because I also have my belief that I'm pretty great at what I do, and I've gotten pretty far in it, and such. But it's all like I'm just fucking around
Yeah.
in some ways. Like I have no
Yeah.
clue what I'm doing half the time. I just have enough experience with it that I kind of know that it works,
Yeah.
and then something seems to have relaxed in me in a way that makes life pretty easy generally
Yeah.
and makes
Yeah.
most human interaction pretty sort of, yeah, okay, you're a human, I'm a human. There's not such a big deal
Yeah.
here. And then sometimes I get reactive or triggered or whatever. But as you say, then I've also gotten better at sort of noticing that and being like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, this is a learning opportunity or whatever. Um, So there's something with this, like, at least for me, feeling this. I don't know. I think it's a bit far-fetched to call it megalomania, but like there's feeling my own sort of bigness, and at the same time having this, well, I don't know what I'm doing. And how do you balance that when you work and when you write?
Yeah, I mean it's a great question. I think it's at the heart of what this practice is. I'll go back also to the answer on uh, the first response that I gave when you asked me what I'm learning in the practice, and that sense of humility, right? And so um, uh, part of what circling really is for me is the ability to be in inquiry with your own experience. And what I find really important as a trait for that is a word I use, I call earnesty. So it's that earnesty is the capacity to keep coming back to your experience and to be willing to learn from it. So both what is not working here and what is hard and what is hurting, but also with a sort of positive sense of like, okay, but the deeper intention that I'm serving is still showing up in this way, right? So I'm in the moment when I had a circle this weekend and the guy it was his first circle and I was having a really tough time like just getting a sense of contact in the moment. He was going into a lot of different stories about who he was and what he was experiencing and not really getting the like, oh, we're just kind of being here together thing that we do in Recircle. And part of it is that part of the earnesty in that is being willing to say like, oh, this isn't working. I'm wanting something different here. Like I think maybe that goes back to what you're saying is who am I, right? I can reveal whatever that is. So being in contact with the thing that you're actually wanting and being willing to throw out all the other junk that comes up from you, that are all of the other things that you are wanting that you're not recognizing or that aren't actually being reflected in that. Um, and there's another thread and I can't quite find it. Um, but yeah, so inquiry, like being willing to be in earnest inquiry with what my experience is, something like that. And that always, for me, that always has like I think I said this before, but it's like the workshops that I give are often like hilarious because I don't fucking know, right? So sometimes it's like it's like watching an elephant try to juggle like some of these things I feel really bad at, right? Like, and it's just, oh, blah, there it goes. That's the thing. So I don't know. I think all of that approximates a response to what it is that you're pointing towards. I'm not sure. And I think some of it, like, yeah, the megalomaniacal part of it is also funny. Like, all of this, so much of the path of awakening, in distinction to how I think you thought I'm coming in with that word beforehand, but so much of that path of awakening is a process of um I don't know what I'm doing or going for or reaching for or trying to get or trying to bring about. And if I'm honest with that, that's where the earnesty comes in again. If I'm honest with that, then I do get to see all of these different things that are trying to fill that space that I'm purposefully holding open. And it's easy to get attached to all of those too. It's easy to hold on to them and to hang on to them. But we're constantly coming back to this sense at a baseline of the practice of circling. We're constantly coming back to this sense of everything that we're experiencing is provisional, it's constructed, it's conditioned. And so I can affirm what that is. I can say, yeah, I really think this is the case right now, while at the same time saying that's just a thought. And fuck if I know. And I don't really have the this is also and this is where empathy comes in circling too. I feel like empathy at a basic level in this practice is the recognition that other people are different than you and that they have their own experience that is fully fucking valid. And the willingness and the courage to be able to be different from the people that you're interacting with. uh, this to be able to grant people what their own experience is, especially of you, and especially when you don't like what their experience of you is, and I don't know, just going through that practice again and 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 again over years and years and years and years and years, and continually coming up with these places where I really am wanting to do something special, or where I'm really trying to give somebody some experience, or I'm really trying to say something smart. As you can imagine, that one comes up for me a lot. So for years, I'm just like, oh, I'm really trying to say something smart right now, and that sometimes just dissolves it. And I don't need to, but I'm just there with the people, as in a way that's more responsive to what's happening. And sometimes it clears my block out of the way and I get to say something super smart, but I wouldn't have been able to if I hadn't, sort of revealed that and confessed it.
Mm.
I do think there's a very intelligent and linear response to the question that you asked, buried somewhere in the series of impressions that I've just thrown out. So I'm just going to leave it there.
Yeah, I, I I like hearing you. It brings up things that feel important to me, like the capacity to, at least the capacity that I feel have grown in me is like really being with the importance of my experience. And that is like, I really want this to happen, or I'm really
Yeah.
seeing this with you, or like this is fucking important for me, and I'm holding it lightly.
Yeah.
And like that particular expression, yeah, I hear a lot in what you're speaking into.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
That's part of
some
the,
the
go ahead.
earnesty or earnestness, or like really being with myself,
Yeah.
and which is something I have. That's one of the qualms I have with the circling practice, is that there's sometimes this sense of shutting down oneself in the attempt to be more circling-y. Uh, that is like there's a particular way it should look where I'm
Yeah.
already there.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then that becomes some kind of performance of
Yeah. Totally.
something that seems a bit sort of meek and, yeah, I don't know, the unrelatable at least.
Yeah.
Whereas like there's something in the no, I'm here and kind of an idiot. I'm also really beautiful and I want to be with you.
Yeah.
That's at the
Yeah.
core of the practice for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And then let me see if I can find words for it. Um, because all of those things are actually like getting in the way of connection. None of them are necessary. None of them are, they're all masks or distractions or whatever it is. And it's such a beautiful and painful, like there's pain in this for me. It's such a painful irony for, a lot of people who are attracted to the practice of circling want to feel connection with other people and don't know how, or don't know, in different ways. And it's so fucking simple. It's so stupidly unexpressibly simple. And yeah, I lost my track a little bit from what you said, but couldn't quite get my words on it. So you
Yeah.
don't have to
So,
go any, you don't have to do
but
anything or
you
go
did
anywhere.
say a word now that and maybe this is a time to end because we're well beyond an hour. But connection
Mm,
is a word that is used a lot, and it's
yes.
become sort of a pet peeve for me. And
Yeah.
I don't usually like to be this language policey, but it keeps coming up in workshops I lead, and I keep having the same reaction. That is like, connection is not somewhere we're going to go. It's not a place that we're going if something
Yeah.
particularly
It's not a
good
thing we're
happens.
going to get and experience. Yes.
It's
Yes.
connection is here,
Yes.
and we can name the quality of the connection, and that
Yes.
might be fear or discomfort
Yes.
or not knowing how to get closer to you while I really want to get closer to you, or whatever. But if we make it into like I feel disconnected now and I want to be connected, then that's not the like that's a mistake of some kind. It's not
Exactly. Exactly.
what I'm trying
Exactly.
to be.
Exactly. 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 All of these, so commitment to connection is the phrase that, what do they call, transformational connection uses, right? And I think there's an important practical instruction in that that can show up in different times. But the deeper layer of that is a view. It's a recognition that whatever is happening is already the connection. It's the expression of the connection in this moment
Mhm.
because interconnectivity, there isn't any other place to go but here. And all of these is the same thing with presence. Like, how do you get more present? You just recognize what is actually happening right here. That's bringing that presence and weaving it into whatever you thought was not present, the second beforehand. Is there a little bit of dancing around the words there? Is there something that connection means, which is an experience? Is there something that being more presence actually means? Like, I think so. I think it's important to hold those as being possibilities, but I also think it's important to recognize that if there is a path to any other place where connection and presence are, it starts in being real, being honest, being earnest with whatever is actually in your experience at this moment. And there are all sorts of caveats and potential rabbit holes around that, but all of these practices, all of these things that all of these words that we use to talk about the process of and the results that we are looking for from what this practice is when we try to answer the question, why are we doing this or where are we going, come back to just being able to do that thing increasingly with increasingly intense or increasingly neglected or increasingly dismissed aspects of your own experience as it is right now here between the two of us or whoever's here.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess for me, it's like something like these words can be useful, but they can also really get in the way of
Yeah,
doing the thing that I
yeah,
want to be doing.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like when I hear people say that they don't feel connected, I'm like, yeah, what is actually going on?
yeah,
Like, can you just tell us with normal words what's
yeah,
happening? And then it's
yeah,
like, oh, I feel tense and uncomfortable. And
yes,
that person over there said something that I didn't like, and I was scared of saying it.
yeah.
I was like, oh, yeah, that's lovely. Like that all, yeah, we can
And
just
how do you feel more present now? Do you feel more connected? Like pretty much inevitably, the answer to that is yes.
mm,
You know, if you get to something that someone's actually feeling that they haven't named, pretty much inevitably the answer to that question is going to be yes, I do. I actually feel like I'm present now. And then like, how did you do that to me? Like, no.
yeah. Yeah, no, I find it tricky because it's in some way I don't like my own reactivity about it because there is like it also makes sense. Like I can just hear what people are saying
Yeah.
when they say that they don't feel connected, and like
There's a thing that you mean with that, but I think it's really, and what you're pointing to that I think it's really important. It goes all the way back to the beginning of the discussion that we were having is there is some conceptual framework that they are holding over their experience that is actually blocking the thing that they're fucking looking for,
mm,
right? Is actually keeping them from noticing its aliveness inside them right now at this moment. And so much of the practice is just some of it is corrective in that way, but so much of it is just it's just removing, it's just get under that, get under that, get under that. What is the
mm,
thing that's happening? And the example that you gave, I think, is great. Like you're not feeling disconnection. And this happens a lot with people too, because so many of our emotions are so intense that we don't know what the fuck to do with them. You're not feeling disconnection. You're feeling anger,
mm,
and you don't understand that you can be here with that anger without risking something necessarily, right? Or upsetting the other person, or maybe it's fine that they're upset. I mean, again, Whatever's happening on for an individual person is gonna be their own mix of all of these complex things, but the basis of it is just going to be some way that I'm orienting to my experience, some belief that I have is going to tell me the thing that I want is not here right now. The thing that I want is not present because I don't like what's happening, right? If I got the thing, I would like it. I would know that it was here.
Yeah.
It's just not the way that we work. It's not the way that our minds work.
Mm. Yeah. It's like I, I typically hear I feel disconnected as like I'm dissatisfied or like something
Yeah.
feels off. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, let's figure out what's off.
This is when we're talking about the difference between anchor circling and open circling. This is one of those important markers for me because when you, in an open circle, in a surrendered leadership context, that signal, which can be really subtle, like something's off right now, something isn't the way that it ought to be or should be or something, whatever the words are, that signal can be really, 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 really fucking important. But if you haven't gone through the process of recognizing that that signal is a thing that you're doing and learned how to take a deeper and deeper ownership for what that experience is, you can't actually hear the gift that it's bringing and again, I'm not saying this universally, and for sure, sometimes that happens in the surrendered leadership context in a way that can be really magical. But as a capacity that we're building, not only as an individual, but as a capacity that we're building collectively, it's a really different thing to feel that sense of offness in tune with like the deeper collective realities of being human, as opposed to I feel this sense of offness because I'm not getting your attention right now. And it reminds me of being, this would be unconscious, but it reminds me of being a child at the dinner table and my loud brother got all of the attention from my parents while I just ate my dinner by myself, right? If you haven't started to reclaim that material at a really deep level and take ownership of that material in a really deep level, then it's like trying to learn how to swim in the middle of the ocean. Like there's so much going on between us collectively that when we take all of those contexts off that we normally use to relate with each other, like there's just so fucking much and it's a judgment that I have, but it's I think too much for a lot of people when they are starting off on the practice. I think it causes people to repel from something which could be really really useful and which I like. Again, my belief is this would be really useful for a lot of people who don't have access to it necessarily at the moment, and I feel like that's part of what it is that I am doing in this life and in this world is to try to make that connection between, what it is that has been so invaluable for me in practicing this and what it is that, I can see has been invaluable for you and make sure that it is available for people that are ready for it. Not everybody needs it. Not everybody's going to be ready for it, but you know, I think there are more people that could use it than are practicing today. We'll put it that way.
It sounds like the picture I get is some kind of scaffolding, like the sort of actually explaining the steps and making the mystery of the practice less mysterious and more sort of, well, this is what we do and this is what we're learning. And when we practice more,
Yeah.
this stuff will come online and you can expect these things to happen and something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, very much so.
Hmm.
Well, as long as it's so, again, when I said before, this is it's a particular way of relating to how we generate cognitive and conceptual material that isn't either, it is the mystery is not reducible to that form, but it can't be obscured by it either. You can't do anything to kick the mystery out of the room,
Mhm.
right? But also, if you're sitting in a room of I'm trying to think of an example of a I'm not in a lot of contexts where this is the case, but I'm in some of them. Like if I'm in a meeting in corporate America where we're talking about what our KPIs for this quarter are, like it's not necessarily skillful to point towards the mystery. but I can embody it. I can relate as it in relationship, even in that context. And there might be something skillful that comes out of it that wouldn't come out of it if I was like, we're all fucking monkeys. What are we doing here? My son is really, really into this bizarre video on YouTube right now where a gorilla is riding a motorcycle, and he's like monkey motorcycle. He'll say to me, "It's like monkey motorcycle." It's like, yeah, okay, I guess we can watch the monkey motorcycle video. Yeah, monkey motorcycle. So it's top of the mind, so to speak. Yeah. I really appreciate the invitation. I appreciate what you're doing. We didn't talk at all about the Relating Arts project, but I find that really interesting. There's a whole direction of like, what are the ecosystem of practices that are coming on right now that I feel really interested by too, and we didn't get to touch on. But also you were asking me questions, and I'm obliged. I'm happy to respond. But I really appreciated this, and I felt I did get a better. Um, I think I did get a better sense of what it is that, is driving you and how it is that you're showing up, which I appreciate quite a bit.
Yeah,
So,
same. It feels, yeah, it's part of what I really appreciate with having these talks is that I get into this sort of sense of resonance with like, oh yeah, this is where we meet in some of the same, which is I don't know. I think sometimes I can get a bit sort of narcissistic or whatever about my stuff and like how uniquely I'm thinking about the world and like yeah, I'm a great pragmatic and
not
that's
me at all.
uh,
That's a Peter problem.
yeah, exactly. And then it can be nice to sort of get a bit more into like, oh yeah, there's someone over there, and they're actually thinking about kind of the same things, maybe using slightly different words, but and
One of the things that has always meant a lot to be because in that initial experience that I was talking about of We Space, it's a recognition of like, oh, we're showing up and doing this right now, right? Like this is something so much broader and deeper and different than just what this person's pet projects and obsessions and fixations are. And yeah, it's always rewarding to be like, oh, right, we're riding that same wave, we're expressions of that same impulse. I find that
yeah,
really uh, comforting in a way.
yeah, and I think there is something like, well, we talked about this before I pressed record, but this massive life changes that's happening for me and having a child now that is also bringing up this like what am I actually doing and why am I doing it in a new way
Yeah.
and one of the things that has come very sort of clearly in my face is this like okay, I seem to keep being in this like it's important for me, like I'm important somehow
Mm.
in all of this, and I need recognition or I need something, and I keep landing in this like, oh, I could also just freely give my stuff and like just be really generous
Yeah.
and like because I want to see it in the world and I
Yeah.
think I have something to offer and like
Yeah.
give it away and
Yeah.
like not in a like I want to make money as well. I want to have a job, but sort of the, there's some kind of contraction in like the I'm important because I've practiced something that
Yeah.
seems to be letting go
Yep.
a bit, where it's more like, yeah,
Yeah.
have this stuff.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I feel like I'm doing a similar thing with the words that we were talking about before, where it's like, okay, I'll I'll take I'll take that roll up. Um, I'll still be giving it freely. I'll still be, I'm still going to be generous with what it is that is here to give. But like, okay, you want me to do this thing? Like, I'll do that, but I'll do it in a way that isn't, you know, that is both reflective of where have these fixations and the desire to be something, different or new or special or whatever, whatever the word is of the moment. Um, but that helps me to see those things and be like, actually, that's not really what I'm here for. I'm here for this thing. I'm here to give this thing, or I'm here for your benefit right now. I'm here to teach you this practice, not to be a smart person. I'm here to, whatever and however that shows up. I have my own struggle with that, you know, hitting my head against the wall of like, there's something so valuable here that I want to give. Oh my God, it's so valuable. Come on.
Mm.
Come on. Where are the people lining up with open hands? Come, come, come.
But that's the thing
Yeah.
for me, is like that precise position I found myself in for so many years now, of
Yeah.
like, and the picture that keeps coming up is being sort of a child that has picked up pretty stones on the beach and
Yeah.
wants someone to say that they want to see them
Yeah.
because it's too scary to just sort of show people like, oh, I found something here. So I want you to invite me to show you.
Yeah.
And that particular way of relating to the world is very like, that is my fucking karma. Like that
Yeah.
is central
hmm
to how I am in the world.
Yeah.
And when I talk about being generous, it's like, well, I found some stuff. I do actually want to show it. And I feel pretty shy and awkward about it
Yeah.
because in some way it's super banal.
Yeah.
And it's a bit scary that it took me fucking 45 years to sort of start understanding some of these things. Um, and and it's really rich.
Yeah.
And obviously every human being wants love and
Yeah.
wants to be listened to.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's the
I feel you.
crux right now.
I feel you. No, I get I feel you. I feel the reflection and the sense of all of the things that happen when you're shiny rock, when someone is like, "Bleh." Well, it took you for, I'm 43, but it's like, what is it that I can really say at this point? Like, we've been taught a lot of words, a lot of words, but what does it come down to? It's like, it's good to be here, Like, life is a good thing. Enjoy it, give love to the people that are close to you. Do what it is that you can in this world. Like, it's a pretty basic fucking thing to say, right? It's not some complex technical equation or, shiny toy or something. It's just like, no, it's good to be here. It's good to be alive.
We seem to keep trying to find an ending. And
Yeah, it's just exciting to talk with you.
yeah.
I think that's a good one. I think it's good to be alive is a good place to, it's a good place to pause.
Yeah, sweet. Well, lovely talking to you.
Yeah, likewise.